The Maryland threat is basically that this is what Maryland football is that they've got some athletes, but they don't have enough of them. They've got they always have one really good wide receiver. I think they've got two that are really good. They lost to one of their best ones earlier this season. They usually have speed on offense. The defense is weak and thin and gives up a lot of points in yardage, but they might have one NFL corner over there, and they just don't have the volume. They just never have the volume, but they're fast. They usually have a fast team. And this year, finally, for the first time in over 10 years, they've got a quarterback who can at least threaten a defense. Yeah. He makes mistakes, but he's talented.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I was a little bit concerned about this game because in their first 3 or 4 games, they were rolling. They looked like a competent team. They actually did look like they had the athletes out there. But now, it's just they just don't, unfortunately. And so I thought that they were taking this step forward this year, but they really have, towards the back end of the schedule, the one game that I look to see how good they are is the Indiana game. Indiana has looked about as bad as you can get, and they only beat them by 3 points and gave up 35 to that offense. And so, man, I would just be I would be shocked if Michigan doesn't win this by 3 scores. I would have, like I said, when I saw this game on the schedule, I'm thinking, okay, if Michigan can get through their schedule, this is the trap game. This is it right here. It's on the road. But I just think that Michigan's going to take care of business. I highly doubt that this defense is going to let up a ton. I actually think it's a pretty good prep game for Ohio State with Tagovailoa and with them having some speed. So not that I don't think their offense is anywhere near Ohio State's, but it's
they've got players.
Yeah, they've got players. I want to say this, but I don't. It's almost like the JV game to Ohio State, to Ohio State's offense, honestly.
Yeah, it's both in regards to talent differential, and if it goes as planned, it's a 45-21 game, and it was good competition, but not too good, not taking it to the fourth quarter, but good warm up and style on offense, and some athletes not at that caliber, or really as many of them. Like Raheem Jarrett is a 5-star. He's having a great season. He can really play, but there's not just waves of them. There's a couple guys that can hurt you, and you just obviously focus on them.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, if you look at what Michigan's defense has done in the past, 4 weeks, it has been really impressive outside of the Michigan State game. And the Michigan State game, you got to give it up to Kenneth Walker. I think he's the best running back in the country and probably should be the Heisman front runner. And, the other thing about the Michigan State game, Michigan's defense played pretty damn well outside of maybe 10 plays. There were some play. It was just big plays that they gave up. And that's how Michigan State has scored under Kenneth Walker and with, their Reed and Naylor too. But outside of, I would say 10 plays in the Michigan State game, their defense has played phenomenal, and then when you look at, obviously Northwestern is a not very good football team. Indiana, not either. But even to do what they did against Penn State. And I thought, you take away the 4th downs and they're off the field. I mean, Michigan's defense was on the field almost, it felt like the entire game, the first half specifically. So for what they've been able to do, I think that they're going to take it to Maryland pretty well, I'd say. But, there's a chance that this defense, if they do what I think that they're going to do on Saturday, they go into this Ohio State game with a lot of confidence going against what we could probably say is the best offense in the country.
Penn State ran 33 plays in the first quarter. Michigan ran 6. They said on the broadcast that was the biggest discrepancy in college football for the entire season, any game.
Wow. I mean, it felt like it. So it definitely felt like that. And so I did have to give them credit because then, I knew at that moment when that was happening, this is going to affect the ending of the game because in the second half, when Penn State ultimately has their run, which they did, Michigan's defense was tired. It just felt like they kept going to Dotson, they kept going there, and we knew it, but just couldn't stop it. And so that was it. So if Michigan's able to, stop that, get off the field, that was their problem against Michigan State too. They'd have them pinned back to at 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and then somehow Michigan State squeaks one out. That's what happened against Penn State in the second half too, and that was how they were able to get their run. That's going to be the key. We keep looking forward to Ohio State, but I think we're there at this point, to be honest. That's going to be their key against Ohio State is can they get off the field and get a 3 and out or force that turnover on downs and take, obviously the big play is going to be the big one, right? Is going to be take away the big play. But if they can get off the field instead of letting a 3rd and 9, a 3rd and 10 up, that's going to be, I think, the difference in that game.
All you have to do is look at the Penn State and Nebraska games against Ohio State. They still gave up a ton of yardage to Ohio State, but they held in the red zone, and Ohio State kicked field goals, or they missed field goals or threw a pick against Nebraska red zone, or Ryan Day wanted to go for it and didn't get it. So they rang up a ton of yardage, but they only scored 33 and 26 in those two games because they were stuffed in the red zone and they had to kick field goals versus Purdue. They just cut loose and just put up an insane amount of points against the defense that's really good.
The defense has played really well, and I think, I thought that Purdue team just in general, they've given it all, and it was just like, we got nothing left. This team is just too good. We got no more magic left, none of that. And especially when you're going into the shoe and all that stuff. But yeah, Michigan's offense against Ohio State's defense is going to be very interesting. My take on it is that Jim Harbaugh, knowing that he going into the season, it was, you need to win that game, right? It still is like that. I don't think anybody expected them to be, possibly 10-1 going into that game. But I think that he has a lot up his sleeve for that game in terms of offensive play calling that they have held back a little bit. We've talked about in the games that Michigan has been able to win handily against lesser teams, they haven't showed anything. They run the ball, and get out of there. Well, there's a chance, I think, that against Ohio State, they've got this whole playbook that they haven't shown except for maybe a couple games against Michigan State and Penn State, that they've got all these different pass plays and different formations that they're going to run. And I could see Michigan's offense making some action, making some things happen against Ohio State's defense because of that.